Wonderful hugs to everyone. We need them more now than ever. So I'm going to jump into my screen share and let's get into it right away. And thank you for having me back, Girls Night Live. So do keep in mind before I go to my screen share, it's okay to make mistakes. Embrace them. Because really, this is about the whole journey and the experience. It is not about perfection in the way we look at things. So I'm going to invite you to go to the left or right if you should want to on some of this, and I'll guide you when that part hits. But I want you to see what we're doing, and then we're going to go right into the session. So I am your instructor. I'm Aleathia Brown. And for those who do not know me, I'm going to take you on a drawing and color journey when we get into this. So this session is called I'll Sip to That. Mine is going to just be a benign bottle of water. So welcome, welcome to Girls Night Out Live with I'll Sip to That. So join me on your first sip to whatever you brought to the screen. So you could have whatever libation you have. This is my contact information. If you so choose to at your own discretion, my PayPal link is on this, so you can make a donation in the tip jar at your discretion. So I like to let people in on whatever it is they're bringing to the screen. It can be a virgin or an adult juice, whatever it is. No judgment because you're in your own space. And so I'm going to go right into some of the supplies. Make sure you have all of your tools on hand because it'll start moving at different paces, and I don't want you to have to leave the screen to go find some of the things you need. So I just put a little directional visual so that you can see what are some of the supplies that we're going to be using in this section, in this session. I also gave you guys options for those who saw some of my online postings over the past week or a couple of days. So you can use other things like buttons or the cap from a bottle of water. If you have a circle or something else that you can use, make sure you have some drawing paper. You're pretty much going to need about 3 sheets of drawing paper. So what we're going to start with, if you have a number 2 pencil, if you have a piece of white drawing paper, and whatever the size of your white drawing paper, I'm going to ask you to pull that 1 sheet out and have something that you could lean on as you're doing the art piece. So if it's the back of the drawing pad or a tray or notebook or something, you want something smooth and sturdy that you can lean on while you're doing your drawing. So I'll explain some things going down the runway of information. So if you have a 9 by 12 piece of paper, we're going to take a number 2 pencil and your ruler and make that paper 9 by 9. So we want it to be a square. If your paper is larger than that, you can make it 10 by 10, 11 by 11, or 12 by 12. But the idea is to make it a square. So just take the ruler and your number 2 pencil, draw a line so that you're taking off anywhere from 2 to 3 inches, depending on the size of your paper, so that it is a square. Once you make the line, just take your scissor and write on that line, cut it, or if you've got a handy hands-on at folding and creasing, make a nice little flat fold and crease, and then cut it like that if you so choose. So we have your actual art piece prepped. That's the first thing you're going to do. So make sure you have the other 2 papers to the side, because one will be a scrap paper, the other one will be our practice grid for patterns and colors. So make sure you also have your colored pencils somewhere nearby so you can get to what we're going to get into. One of the things that I'm going to have you guys do, if you see on my screen, there are 2 sets of papers. They can be attached. They don't have to be torn like I have them here. I just did that so you can see. On your second piece of drawing paper that's uncut, you can just make a grid like that. So make 2 grids that's going to be for coloring, And then you're going to make another 2 grids that's going to be further down the project that's going to have patterns and lines and designs. So it's going to be 4 altogether. So if they can all fit on the same page, that's fine. I only cut them just to show you visually, but they can sloppily be drawn because they're really just practice grids and they're just a sample of what's going to lead you into having some more creative freedom when we get to the parts of coloring and layering things that's going to happen on your piece. So just a reminder, and I'll repeat some things just so that people, because you're going to see things on the screen even beyond what my words are. The idea is to give you some tools so that when we get to parts that you're going to be able to use your imagination and your creative expression, I want to be able to give some space and step back or step out of your way. So make sure that you have enough room on your second page that's uncut for 4 grids. You see, they're just rectangle with 4 boxes. These 2 out of the 4 are going to be what we're going to do some color samples on. The other 2 is going to have some patterns and designs. So I'm going to ask you to, out of your colored pencils, find 1 out of 4 colors. Pick 4 colors, but out of the 4 colors, pick 1 right now that you're going to color in the box number 1 that says color 1 on, you see my screen. So you're just like as if you were pouring water into a glass, fill that whole box up so that you have that 1 of your 4 colors in that box. So you want the first box to be just 1 color. And if you finish before I get to the second box, you can sip to that because you're on and ready for the next thing. So I am going to sip to you. I'm going to speak while you're coloring so that you can hear things as things progress. When you think in terms of how you hold a pencil, there's 2 ways to go about it, and sometimes things are not so obvious, so I'll say even the obvious. Imagine if you were holding a pencil so tight like you were trying to keep it from getting out of your grip. When you hold it that tight, you're putting more pressure on the weight of how your color is going to be on that page. So you're going to get a more opaque view of the color. But if you were to hold the pencil almost like as if you were falling asleep, almost about to drop the pencil, you're going to get a lighter tone. And those things are important when we go down the road to being able to show different tones and different hues. The hue is really basically how much light is showing through. So it's you got the color is opaque or translucent so that you get different effects. The reason for translucent effects is so that you can actually layer other colors on top of each other and they start blending and becoming a whole new presentation. So I like to layer colors because unlike with paint, when you're using a dry material like colored pencil, you're gonna have a different experience. So we're gonna go on to box number 2. Box number 2 should be where you can see some of the white paper through it, but still fill in that whole box. You're still taking that same color that you used in box number 1, and you're repeating it lighter in box number 2. So the box number 2 is going to be 2 colors. If you see my words on top of the box, it says color 1, 2, and 3. Don't go ahead of me because I'm actually not going to do what you think it's going to do. So on box number 2, make sure you have still your 4 colors somewhere nearby because we're going to go back and forth. So in box number 2, once you fill that whole box in, you're going to then take your second color and weave it into where the white spaces are. Go in the same direction that your stroke of color is going. So if you went left to right or in a curve, then go in the same direction. And soft to medium pressure, meaning don't hold the pencil tight, hold the pencil in the same kind of pressure you want the weight to be on the page. And make sure that you start weaving it in where you can still see the yellow or whatever blue or whatever red color you first put in that. Make sure you're being able to see both colors in that space. So I'll show you. You see how I did with weaving in the light blue into that yellow? you can still see the yellow. It's not taking over. So you want to make sure that you have that. For those who move quicker than others, because you're getting the hang of it as we move along, box number 3 is going to be 3 of your 4 colors, and you're repeating that same application. So you're putting the first color in, then you're weaving the second color in your third box, and then you're putting your third color on top. Sometimes if I want one color more dominant than the other, I'll go back and repeat one of those 3 colors just to put it on top so I have another layering. So in box number 4, you're using all 4 colors, but again, keep in mind the amount of pressure that you have, because when you're using light colors and dark colors in the same space, one color can be more dominant than the other. You can always add more of a color if it's too faint or too light, but you can't take it off quite the same. So make sure you start from soft to medium, almost like a whisper. You want to think in terms of that. So once we've done all 4 of these boxes, take your sip, take a deep breath, and we're getting ready to go on the ride about I'll sip to her, and I'm going to take you on that journey. So one of the things that's going to happen, make sure that you have a square paper. And I'll say this for those who just joined in. When we get to the page that you're doing the art piece on, I've asked everyone to make sure it's a square. So if you have a 9 by 12 piece of paper, make sure you take off those 3 inches on the 12-inch side of it so that it's a 9 by 9 piece of paper. Take your ruler, take your pencil, take your scissor, and make the line so that you can cut off that extra piece so that the page is actually equal on all 4 sides. So if you have a larger piece of paper, make sure it's whatever the size paper, 10 by 10, 11 by 11, or 12 by 12, as long as you have a square. And I've done this so that it can go in either size depending on what you have. So I'm going to go to the next part. This is just the preliminary part of her. Her head is an odd circle, not a complete circle like you would have evenly rounded, but imagine if you took a rubber band and tried to just stretch it out from the inside. You see the left and right side is a little bit more oval, and the top is more narrow than the sides. So you're going to draw about 2 inches from the top of your page in your number 2 pencil. You're going to, on your actual drawing paper that's the square, you're going to draw the head a little bit more to the right of the page, not full center, because we need to leave room for her hand that's holding the cup. So I just gave you the first part of what her head shape is looking like, but this is what's going on with her. So you'll see she's got the cup in her hand and the pinky out because she's having her sip. There are 3 waves inside the cup. There's a horizontal line going left to right, a little bit about midway of her head. You can use your pencil, and the reason why I had you guys bring your pink erasers is so that if lines are going through things that are not meant to, like the center of her head, you can just erase those out. But put your line through sort of midway so that the top of her head is maybe 2 inches below the top of your paper. And the shape of her head starts a little bit to the right of your page, not dead center. The cup is like a circle turned sideways and stretched like a rubber band so that you can have the 3 waves inside of the cup, and you make sure you have that horizontal line. So I just basically said what I did in writing here. So the next part of this, because all of these are layerings of what you're doing, there are 2 horizontal lines. If you see the one that's sort of midway of her head, there's another one above near the top of the page that's bold, and then there's a line that goes above that looks like mountains. Think of it as if it was a pulse, like a heartbeat. Just take your pencil half an inch above that horizontal line near the top, and just go left to right or right to left, whichever is comfortable for you, and just let the pencil, as if it was a magic wand, go softly up and down, like as if you were just waving a wand, moving it up and down, not perfectly. So you have it looking like mountains to the distance. You'll decide if your sky scene is going to be day or night, depending on what. So I just put a small circle in the sky. You don't have to place yours in the same spot that I did. That's on you. You can also draw one or two clouds. Remember, clouds are all unique, just like snowflakes. They're not the same shape. So you can, and I left that blank so that you can decide, is it daytime? Is it nighttime? Are there clouds? Are there birds? Is there a plane? Is there a hot air balloon? You get to use your imagination because I didn't want to tell you every single thing to put in case you, just in case you wanted to add your own identity to your design. Inside her head, I put coils to add texture for hair, and I put wavy lines, and I stopped at a point so just so you can see what I was doing. So you can decide design wise with your number two pencil so that if you want to change something, you can erase it. You can do that. So far we have two horizontal lines. You have the shape of a head. Now you can change the hairstyle. The only thing that I'm asking and inviting you to keep as a consistent flow is that hair piece, like an adornment on her that looks like a barrette, is actually an Adinkra symbol. Adinkra symbols are germane to Ghana, and so the symbol represents hope. What, how significant to a day like today with what's going on in the world? We need hope. And so ironically, I did this months ago. And so it's timeless for what it speaks to. So if you change the shape of the head or the style of the hair, just make sure you adorn the hair somewhere or the head somewhere with the symbol hope. And it's got that flower in the center, and it's like two half circles with a line across the center. So that Adinkra symbol should just be somewhere on there. Now, again, here's where you get to design and add your own spin. You can add a scoop neck as the shirt. You can add, whatever detail for you to put a pattern in for her top. I just put like a V, and then I added a zigzag line on either side, and patterns can change. I sometimes wear plaid and stripes and polka dots, so you can begin to think about how you want to use that space. So I'm going to just show you. This is the Adinkra symbol. So wherever you decide to put it on your character's hair or head, hair or no hair, if you want to put a hat on her, if you want to embellish what her head has on it, hair or not, or a different style than I did, this is the Adinkra symbol that represents hope. Some of you, just in case, and I just say this so you guys will know, let me sip to that. You can also take some pictures of the screen so that if as we come to an end, you can still add details and come back to things on your own. You do not have to plan to finish everything because I'm going to send the PowerPoint to Girls Night out so that if someone wants to go back over all these steps, you can go back over it. So move at your own pace, and wherever you don't complete, if I keep going, you can still work at your own pace because you'll have access to the PowerPoint, but you'll also be able to make it your own and embellish. So if you want, take pictures of the screen as well. Moving along, you see in my sky, I have clouds and I have lines that repeat, like the top of that mountain line. I just kept repeating it so that it formed the wavy skyline. So in the sky, I went a little above that mountain line, and then I just left space in between each, and that's how I began to do those lines. Remember, we're still using the number two pencil so that if you make a mistake, you can erase it and go on to next. So I began to start putting the patterns in, and there is one, two, three lines that are waves pointing to the right. The reason why I did that is because I was talking about the Atlantic Ocean. And because we're almost nearing Black History Month, and I'm always using things as signs and messages, the transatlantic slave trade and those waves that brought us here, that's the direction of the waves on this piece in tribute to that. So the waves are going pointed to the right. So there are only three waves. The one in the center is more dramatic because I'm going to fill that space in a solid color, and the wave above and below is going to have pattern. So in their hair, in the cup, there's three waves. Three is also a very symbolic message in terms of Trinity and divinity and beginning, middle, and end when we talk about a story. And a picture is a story, it's a visual message that is telling a story. So that's what the number three for me is in each of those messages: three clouds, three waves inside the cup and inside the water that she's viewing. So those are my hidden messages, if you will. So I'm showing you what that screen looks like. So in these waves, I just took lines and repeated them so that I have spaces in which I can add color and separate one space from another. So if you see the two sets of waves that have repeated lines, in those spaces, I can take three colors or two colors and keep repeating them like a blue and a yellow and have those two sets of stripes. And then the center and the top where it's blank, I can put another solid color to break up the pattern. So the patterns are broken up by solid spaces so that other details can be put in there. So you see the Sharpie that's on the page and the screen. The Sharpie marker is so that I can do the outline after the drawing is done with pencil. This way, you can always take the eraser and go over everything, which I call a cleanup job. I also have, just gonna go to this one. This is the template of circles, but I said to some of you, if you have a dime, a penny, a quarter, if you have buttons, you can use those as circles to trace. So find a coin, find a button, and I'm going to come back to where I was just at. So the coins give you a circle that you can use as a pattern. So in that blank space around her, where it's just open space that could be like land, that's what I did, space out circles on, and you'll see as we go a little bit further down the piece. So for those of you ready for the color, if you saw what we did in the four boxes, we have four colors, starting with the first box with just a single color, then two colors, then three colors, then four colors. So if you want to switch out whatever four colors you did, since you didn't know what I was doing with that, you can just make sure you're going to use four colors, at least four colors on this piece of art. You can use more. That becomes your option. So at least pick out four colors that you're going to use consistently throughout your design. When you find the four colors you want, swap out what you had already. If you don't, keep them as they are. What I have going on here is I began to start with the sky, and I used the blue on a softer kind of whisper so it looks light and faint, and then I use it heavier, like medium, so it was a little darker. So I play with color, maybe the same color in two different ways if I don't want to put a bunch of colors in one area, because pattern is already busy and you don't want something that's already busy to be confusing and busy. So it has purpose to the busyness right now. If you'll notice, I have circles that are like pepper sprinkled around her. They're different sizes, and some of those circles are actually going off the edge. So it looks almost like a half or three-quarter circle, and one is kind of almost hidden behind her arm. So when I put the circles on, I did it with that template, but you can use, like I said, if you have an item. So I have three different size circles on there. Don't put them in a row like you're just filling in space. Really just put them and place them where you want them to go strategically around that space as a pattern. Just kind of put something down, stop, look at it, lift up whatever you're tracing, and then make sure your eyes are telling you where you're placing things, because you don't want it to look like there's a row of circles in one line. So what you make sure is we're going to have patterns inside the hair, the waves, the sky, the mountain. And this way, when we start doing the next level of coloring, you'll begin to see why I have the next grid. So I'll also go back just so some people who just came in will see what we started with. So I had everyone take the grid like this, and the first box you're filling in one color, the second box you're filling in that same color, and on that second box, you're adding the second color on top. Do it soft enough that you can actually see both colors peeking through. Think in terms of like a sunset. You can see oranges and blues and greens all kind of mixing and blending into each other. So what we did with that is we were able to show in a medium to translucent way how the layering of color can go. In this third box, we have three colors. They're all on top of each other. So make sure you don't go so dark and so heavy that the color that's darkest dominates the color that's softest. You want to do it almost like as if you're dropping the pencil out of your hand when you're falling asleep. Just go hold it soft so that you get a softer feel. And so when we started with on your drawing paper, I asked everyone to have a drawing paper that they're going to do the art piece on. On that drawing paper, I asked if you would make it a square. So if your page is 9 by 12, take a pencil and a ruler and a scissor, and then cut off those 3 inches so it's a 9 by 9. Or if it's a larger paper, 10 by 10 or 11 by 11, so that we have a square a little about 2 inches from the top of the page, the shape of the head with that adornment that is an adinkra symbol that represents hope is what we're putting on. But I offered people the option of change the hairstyle, add a hat to her, put a different hairdo on her if you want. You decide as long as you put the hair adornment somewhere on her. And it doesn't have to be in the same spot that I did. So you had the shoulder and you had the head, and then this is what the next phase of her um, body is looking like, holding the cup with the pinky and the three waves inside that cup, because that's telling part of the story of what I mentioned earlier. So I made it so that people can see the stages. So you have a horizontal line that's sort of midway of her head. Then you have another horizontal line that's up near the top of the page, about an inch away from the top. And then there's a line that almost looks like a heartbeat pulse, about a half an inch from that horizontal line. And then there's a circle to the right. That for me was the representation of a sun. You can place it wherever in the sky you want. You can make it larger or the same size. It can be sun or moon, depending on how you feel. It can be a half a moon. So I leave the option to you. You can put three clouds in the sky. You can put birds in the sky. When you see that line that looks like the mountain, you can take your pencil, your number 2 pencil, and above that mountain line, you can just keep repeating that. So you have maybe 3 or 4 repeat lines above that. So I'll go back to mentioning on her hair is the Adinkra symbol, hope. What a perfect message for the moment we're in. Historically, in this very moment, we need hope. So she is wearing a hair adornment, meaning hope. So if you change the hairstyle, just make sure you place the hair adornment somewhere on that head. And if she's got a hat, if she's got a new hairdo, somewhere on there. It can be smaller, it can be whatever size appropriately for the size of her head. But remember, she's the feature or the star of the page. So just make sure you keep that in mind when you proportion how big her head is to the size of your page. And I kept her a little to the right of the page so you had more room to put her hand and that mug. By the way, you can change the mug to a teacup or a bottle or a glass of wine. You decide, since we're all sipping to what we want, you can decide what that will be. And if you take a deep breath, ladies, let's have some hope. I'll sip to that. So I have a template, but I'll come back to that in a second. In the sky, I have repeated the shape of that mountaintop by just leaving space, and I have the clouds. If you draw the clouds in the light form of made up shape, then just make sure you don't go through the cloud when you're doing the sky. It just keeps to being a repeat line so that the sun or moon and the clouds look like a solid white shape among that whole pattern sky scene. And in the mountain, I put dots, but I don't need to do that until I get to the Sharpie part, which we haven't gotten there yet. For some of you, if you finished all of the pencil work that we've gone to this point, you can start outlining with that. If you have, there's two different size Sharpies that I had recommended some to have. If you don't have a black Sharpie permanent marker, then go to your colored pencil set and see if there's a black. Make sure you have a nice point to it. Just as a little tip, when you use colored pencils, it's more ideal if you sharpen your pencils before they get too worn down because it takes so much more and you waste a lot of pencil if you wait till it gets really dull and then start sharpening it. So when you're using your pencils, your colored pencils in particular, make sure before they're too dull, start sharpening them again because it's in one or two turns, you got a sharp point again. But if you let it get all the way down to the wood, now you're going to have to be cranking it or you're wasting more pencil. So you can begin to outline what it is that you've done with your Sharpie. If you have two different sizes in her hair, in the water, in the sky, you can use that ultra fine black Sharpie. And in terms of the bold lines, we have the clouds, the sun, the horizontal lines that go left to right, the waves, and her outline is with that bolder black Sharpie that looks like a fine tip, like a felt tip. So you can trace those things once your drawing is done with the pencil. And so you guys can do that. And the reason why I use the permanent marker and not a regular black, because permanent markers don't smudge. And also they'll still be bold when we start doing color. If the color gets on top of the line, you still see the line more bold. And over time, it just won't fade like that. So make sure you have your black bold outlines. If you're using a colored pencil, you just might have to put a little more elbow grease onto the line work so that it stands out because the black is framing the color when we get to that. Keep in mind, I did say that I'm going to give the PowerPoint to Girls Night Out so that they can share it with all of you. Because if you register, they have your contact information already. I'll just also mention hint, hint, if you'd like to give a tip in the virtual tip jar, you can do that as well. My PayPal is on there. And if you have a problem with PayPal, just hit me up on Aleathia B or any of my social media direct messages, and I can make arrangements for you to send it in a different way. So Girls Night Out, thank you for having me. I'm going to keep talking so you guys can get to the next part because we're doing the color. So if you see the 4 color grid that you had as a sample, you can either use those same 4 colors and repeat them throughout your piece at the top and other places skipping around. I'm going to go to the next thing. So I started taking some earth colors because I was using that for the mountains. And so I filled in that first box. And then I started doing the same thing. I took 2 colors, so brown and green or brown and blue, and I did 3 colors on top of the third box and 4. So I was coloring left to right so that I can weave those earth colors where I was using them in the sky for the mountain. So you decide what color patterns you want to use. So I'm going to show you here. You see the first box is at the bottom and the second box is at the top. I'm just blending colors because it's really important to really play with color on your sample scrap so that you are not intimidated and overwhelmed with how the layering colors can be. You can just play with them however you feel comfortable once you get this. It's just like applying a technique, and now you can go buck wild and break rules and do your own thing if you should need to. but I'm just giving you the foundation of when you're using colored pencils, you're layering, like I'm putting my hand on top of my other hand. So the way you kind of configure that is how much pressure you're going to put on when you're using dominant colors and soft colors so that you can get, the weaving of all of those. So I'll see in this next thing, if you look at her hair, I've used a multitude of those colors and I've put them in a pattern inside her head, right? So some areas I went back over more than once just so it can pop out more. But you decide. Inside the wave, I put a solid blue to separate that solid wave from the other waves that have lines. And you see the rest of the sky that's being woven in. The sky is almost like waves on the water as well. You decide if you don't want to put those lines and details in there, and maybe you're going to just use colors that are blended like in the four boxes. So that's a call you'll make when you see what's happening. But you'll see my page has the weaving of those colors, and just like the sun reflects light onto the water, is why I put that sort of orangey yellow. And it was basically taking orange and yellow together and blending them like I did in the box number 2 above that top wave in the water so that it picks up the yellows from the sky and the sun. You again can decide how you want to play with color for you. So it's just a closer up for you to see when I take colors and start layering them in. Also, remember with those circles, just imagine if you were sprinkling pepper and letting it drop and land. Those circles should look like that. It's just sprinkling around and not making circles in a row just to fill space. You want it as a pattern to look like there's aisles of space that you can fill in between and around those circles. And I just took a solid color because I wanted those circles to illuminate with just a soft edge. So you make sure when you do your circles, you have different sizes. They can be half a circle going off the edge. They can be where they're touching her, almost like how bubbles would be inside of a space. So here's where I took the other two grids, because earlier I said to you, there's two more grids that you were having to do some patterns in. Inside her hair, you'll see that first box has coils. I just did like a spiral, and you see how I left room? Everywhere there's room, I could add another spiral in between that until they're touching and bumping into each other, right? The second box is just lines. I purposely didn't want perfectly straight lines. And I love it when people say things like, well, I can't draw a straight line. There are no straight lines in this piece, darlings. So you can take the line with your pencil or with your Sharpie, and you can start practicing how to get lines waving and curving and sort of interacting with each other so close but not touching, because you want to leave space so that you can fill in between the lines with color. You don't have to finish this all in this session because you get access to the PowerPoint after this session is over. You'll also be able to continue adding whatever spin and details you want. The whole idea is apply what I'm showing and sharing with you so that you now have a piece that you can continuously work on. The first session that I did, people an hour later were sending me pictures on Facebook, and what they did was amazing. So don't rush yourself through the process, because it took me more than an hour to do it and I knew what I was doing. So I invite you to look at the samples and take that in, take a picture of the screen if you need to. But once you have the PowerPoint, you'll have exactly what I'm showing you right now. And I put written parts, since when you're looking at the PowerPoint, you won't be hearing my voice like you're doing now. So you'll be able to be reminded what I said in those written parts in between the visuals. So I did some curves to show you what the wave looks like, and then I did the lines inside the wave. I did those circles where you can see in each box, they were done in different ways. But again, the circles are patterns, and they're like bubbles that are floating in space. So I'll show you what the next page is, but let's sip to that. I send you guys virtual hugs in this moment in time. We get to really detox and focus on coloring and playing with these patterns and really think in terms of how you want it to just kind of resonate on the page for you. Colors can be stories, they can be messages. So you decide what message and story you're telling with the way you're using color. I am using color, and it's sort of a mixture of energies. Oshun is that blue and that yellow in Yoruba. So I have other messages that I put forth when I'm using my color. We all have our own story to tell. Please do what you feel compelled to. You don't have to copy what I'm doing. So you see how I'm playing with the sky. On the bottom of those clouds, I started with that same red that's down at the bottom of the page where the background is around those circles or bubbles. That was the same red that I used in the base of the clouds. And then I went on top of them with the light blue, but I just started weaving the blue softly until it kept filling in space and then adding yellow to spots on it. So when you start playing with color, you begin to see how that is. And by the way, ladies, and maybe some gentlemen out there, I'm not sure. When we get to the end, I would love for you guys to hold up to the screen so we can take a screenshot of what you did. And that way I can kind of post and share where we're at today and what it's going to look like when some of you, hint hint, share with me after this what you've done in your finished version, because I'm hoping that you're inspired to want to keep going and adding more and finishing touches to that. Can we just sip to this moment right now, ladies? Can you just lift up whatever you have and just take a sip? Take a sip of your libation. Yes, yes, yes. I will sip to that. So I wanted to give my shameless plug. These are my coloring Unbound book sets, and they come with a set of pencils and 25 illustrations and a pencil sharpener. So at some point down the road, hint, hint, you might want to get one for me to mail to you, because I want to do a session with the pages from this at a later date if I can get everybody on that same page. So Coloring in Time is my adult coloring set that's family friendly and couple friendly. So that's just for you guys if you should want to. You'll have my contact information in the chat room, and in a moment or two, I'll come out of this so we can share on the screen what we've done and share a word or two, because I like to hear your voice and hear your thoughts and where you're at today with this and just in general. So I'm again not rushing anyone from this because we definitely are going to have you have the PowerPoint to add. And I've posted most of this on my Facebook and Instagram, which is in the chat room as well. Um, I may post some of these images from the PowerPoint on my social media too. So again, you'll have ways to get back to it and see what is the layering and steps that we talked about for you to continue. So if you're compelled to share this project with your loved ones at home, even as an activity, and twist it, turn it into another version, you feel free to do that and send me what you've done. My contact information is in the chat room, so you guys can keep that as well. And don't forget, you can put a tip in the tip jar if you enjoyed your time with me, if you enjoyed learning something about layering with color. Keep in mind when you're doing this, again, color should tell a story, like a story has a beginning, middle, and end. And so you don't feel afraid of you got to match and you have to know ahead of time. Sometimes I may not know what colors I'm going to use until I see how they're affecting me on the page while I'm working. So you can kind of weave the colors in. I love it when I throw a contrast color in that I wasn't expecting, and it just makes the thing pop. So make sure you kind of pause and look at what you're doing, like you're leaning away from it as you sip to that, and make sure that you're looking at the whole page and how your eye walks around the page in like that circular movement. I purposely left highlights of white on the left side of those circles so that the edge was just softly with a light blue and the purple. So I put a little hint of yellow on some of them, like a whisper, but I mostly had the left side of each of those circles that look like bubbles around her, where the white of the paper was mostly showing through. So it gave it more of a spheric look. So it sort of looks like little bubbles floating around. I also took the black colored pencil and made a little shadow on the left side, not a perfect circle, but just kind of so it gave it a shadow effect so it wouldn't look so flat. I put a little black shadow on top of that reddish color. And if you see the red, it's more light on the left side as if that's where the light source is. So my coloring, I just kept layering more of the red on the right side so the left side looked lighter of the page. So just keep in mind, you see her coffee mug is got that green that you see woven in the waves of the water. I strategically will place color in different ways where I want my eye to move, where I want the viewer to kind of follow the journey. And you decide how you want to play with the color. There's no right or wrong. You'll begin to see that as you do it. Sometimes if you have like one of those big pink erasers, you can soften a color that might get too dark, or you can put some highlights where you want some light to be on the effect of like her shoulder or the bubbles. Um, Keep in mind there's some flexibility here, and I'm hoping to see you guys do something different with your patterns too. In her shirt, if you notice, she's got patterns inside that V, circles and stripes. I can do literally thousands of designs just with circles and lines that are straight, curved, or zigzag because of how I place them compositionally. Composition is nothing more than like a musician composing music. You compose where you put those lines and those shapes on the page. Remember, her hair adornment is an adinkra symbol that means hope. So if you change the hairstyle, which you're free to do, just put the symbol of hope somewhere on there so we have that consistent flow with this project on the I'll sip to that theme. I'll sip to hope. How about you? And I'm going to ask when I come out of this, and I'm going to give you about 3 more minutes, and then I want to be able to see in the chat room and hear some of you guys unmuted to kind of get some feedback. If color were hope, what color does hope represent on your piece? And where are we at with that for today? Where is your hope? You get to speak freely. I just want to get some vocals on what message that we have and what feeling that we have today. And I want to say thank you to all of you for showing up and sharing your time with me. I want to ask you to be reminded you can make your donation in the PayPal link, or hit me up and you'll let me know if you have trouble with that. Thank you, Girls Night Live, for having me once again. Give you 2 more minutes and then I'll come out of the PowerPoint and see what you guys have done. Because I really think it's a nice warm way for us to have at least a couple of minutes to talk with each other and just kind of share some hopeful words even. And I'm hoping you guys got a chance to sip to your libation and see how you feel. So I'm going to ask you guys in 1 more minute to hold up to the screen what you've done, but hold it for a moment so that they can screen shoot the whole tile of pictures I'd like to see how they kind of come together. And remember, no judgment because you can continue working on this. They can be unfinished, so that's fine too. Um, so it's 4:53. Let's give it one more minute and then we can come out of the PowerPoint so you guys can talk for a moment or two. I think this is an important moment for us to just be in this bubble, if you will, bubble of hope. So hopefully you guys have got a lot of work done on this time because it moves so fast. And then you can also take and lend from your own experiences other layers of color and pattern. You don't have to follow mine. You can actually, by the way, you can actually, instead of those white bubbles, you can make patterns in those. You could make the water solid colors and just blended colors. So you have some flexibility of how you want to redesign and change how you use the space. So I gave you sort of the layering and then you take it from there. So I'm going to come out of this screen share. I'm going to say, hi, everyone. Hello. Did you enjoy this time with me? Yeah?
Yes.
Here's the voices. I'm giving you hugs, virtual hugs, everyone. Yes, and happy new year to you guys.
Thank
This was
you.
tremendous.